Thank you. I hope that everyone enjoyed the little bit of jazz that I decided to play for you, John Coltrane's Blue Train. And indeed, I thought it is appropriate because the train is moving, and I'm pretty sure that it is going to leave certain people behind. One of those that I think that soon will be off the train of running South Africa is our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. Let me start by saying that this platform that we have created, the Twitter Spaces platform, is intended to give all of you who participate in this platform a voice, the opportunity to express your views, to vent, but also to give the opportunity to some of those who have expressed themselves particularly about a subject to give inputs to us and to enrich our thinking. What we want to deal with tonight is the happenings that took place a number of years ago in 2020 on the Phala Phala game farm of President Cyril Ramaphosa. It is evident from the information that became available because of the charges that had been laid by Mr. Arthur Fraser at the Rosebank police station of serious criminality. Those included large amounts of foreign currency in cash, apparently to the tune of something more than 4 million United States dollars, covering up the presence of that money on the property, covering up a crime of people who came to steal that money, and then also preventing the authorities in South Africa, which includes our South African Revenue Services, and in contravention of our own FICA legislation as amended in 2017 with regards to the amounts of foreign currency that you can have without declaring such and without registering that in bank accounts. Beyond that, there was the commission of a serious crime of abduction and torture. Apparently, some of those who were involved in the theft of this large amount of money left South Africa, went across the border into Namibia, and apparently President Ramaphosa saw it fit to, in an underhand way, engage his counterpart, President Gingop, in Namibia, also to send members of his protection unit without them actually acting officially within the ambit of the South African Police Services action, unregistered, therefore illegally, across the border into Namibia, abduct a person in Namibia, bring that person again illegally in contravention of the various international laws that regulate the travel of people between countries back into South Africa. And then, as I've said, take those persons back to the scene of the crime, the Phala Phala farm, interrogate and in fact torture them. And then at the end of it all, and I dare say in true mafia style, then pay those who have stolen from him off so that all of this can be kept undercover and be hushed up. Now, the number of various criminal offenses that have been committed in this summary that I've just given you is indeed staggering. I'm happy to say that tonight I'm going to be joined by, as I've already indicated, my co-moderator, Tsepo Khadima. I also have on this platform tonight, Member of Parliament for the African National Congress, Comrade Mervyn Dirks, who has indicated that he would be prepared to give an input to us on the basis of an open letter that he had written to President Cyril Ramaphosa demanding accountability for the actions that we now know had taken place at the Phala Phala farm and the actions that surround what happened there from President Ramaphosa. Comrade Mervyn has earned a name for himself as a straight shooter, someone who demands accountability. We recall also the actions that he had taken with regards to the concern that he expressed that President Ramaphosa had acknowledged that he knew that government funds are used for party political purposes, and the request that Comrade Mervyn made to Scopa for President Ramaphosa to appear in front of Scopa. Sad to say, that turned out very differently because of the protection that what I dare need to call spineless ANC members of parliament who protected President Ramaphosa and Comrade Mervyn ended up being suspended by the chief whip of the African National Congress. The third person that will join us is a legal expert, Paul Ngubeni. I'm busy looking if Paul is already online. While we proceed with the discussion, I will look out for him. I also had a discussion earlier today with Comrade Tony Ngeni, who indicated to me that he will join us on this platform, but he said he may decide only to listen, he may decide to speak. Comrade Tony, if you have already joined us, I sincerely hope you will not just be a listener, but in fact, that you will participate and give us some input. We know that you fought a courageous fight on Monday at the National Working Committee meeting of the African National Congress, demanding accountability from President Ramaphosa and also demanding that the African National Congress will have to take action with regards to what has now been revealed. I think we can laud Comrade Tony for having managed to get this critical issue about the conduct of President Ramaphosa onto the agenda of the National Working Committee this past Monday, and I'm sure that he will contribute hugely, together with other concerned and conscientious comrades, to keep this issue on the agenda until accountability is in fact achieved. I now want to hand over to Tshepo Gadima to make his input. Tshepo and I have discussed these issues in preparation for tonight's Twitter Spaces, and he's got some very strong views, especially with regards to the issues around criminality, abduction, and torture, and also the laws that have been contravened in terms of international foreign exchange, both in terms of our own foreign exchange legislation in South Africa and also with regards to foreign exchange legislation internationally and specifically also with regards to the United States. Tshepo, I want to hand over to you to do an input, and after that, I will then introduce Comrade Mervyn again and ask him to give us his input on the open letter that he had written to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Tshepo, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Comrade Carl, and good evening to all the people that have joined us on this very important topic that's affecting not only South Africa, but that is of international interest. Look, I think where we are now is that it is now common cause that the crimes that are alleged to have been committed and as reported to the South African police, I think there's no longer a question mark as to whether those crimes have occurred or not occurred. The question is, well, what is to happen next? But I think the key thing that South Africans and even internationally is that, well, Why must we have this Twitter space? Why must any one of us care? We have to take into account I think, the conscripts of our constitution, and more so because the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, one of the authors of the key role players in putting together the Constitution is none other than the sitting president currently, which is President Cyril Ramaphosa. Therefore, when there are serious allegations whereby it is prima facie evident that the Constitution of the Republic has been subverted, and that there are some, breaches not only of several laws, but the downright criminality that has occurred, and more so because a president of the republic also takes an oath of office and therefore enjoined in duty to uphold and protect the constitution. It is on that basis that every one of us must care and have to develop interest and say, well, is it permissible? Is it tenable that you can have somebody sitting at occupying such a high office in the land with such serious allegation of what has occurred? Now, one of the crimes that are reported as alleged to have happened is that of money laundering. We also have to now take into account that the Financial Action Task Force, which South Africa is a member of, is it one of its purposes for existence is to actually combat money laundering as well as financing of terrorist activities and any other activities that stand to undermine the integrity of the international financial system. And in the event whereby member countries are found to be lacking in enforcing anti-money laundering measures, as appears to have been the case in this particular instance, there are several fines, which then the banking institutions in South Africa stand to be fined for having condoned or having taken no action whatsoever in that regard. And secondly, I also want to just reflect on the issue that some of the crimes that are alleged or reported to have occurred or have been committed, that of torture of would-be suspects, and we can't even say that they are suspects because they were not formally charged. So torture of persons and being effectively kidnapped, those fall under Chapter 2, the inalienable rights in our Constitution. So that is even more serious when you can have a crime of kidnapping and torture occurring. And in terms of case law, the participants on this Twitter space would know of one case in particular, that of one Radavan Krecha, who's currently serving 35 years in jail, and the crime that was committed and convicted for is that of, among others, kidnapping and torture of persons. So these are very, very serious crimes that we are dealing with. But effectively, we have to stand guard, because when the Constitution of the Republic is undermined in any manner or form, we are duty bound. We are enjoined in duty to ensure that we can take the action, a patriotic action as citizens, to ensure that such crimes are not permitted, and more so when they are alleged to have happened or been committed by none other than the first citizen of the republic. Even though the Constitution makes no differentiate, we are all equal before the law. But be that as it may, because he has taken an oath of office, therefore we have to stand guard, and also to ensure that we can protect the integrity of our financial system in South Africa, particularly as you say that the cases of money laundering. All other cases that have been, or rather the charges that have been laid, I think it is important to then say that, well, what will the law enforcement agencies, what are all the other organs of state that are enjoined in duty to ensure that the law is upheld, what are they doing? And perhaps maybe by the end of this Twitter space tonight, we should be able to find out as to, well, has there been any development? Are they going to be doing something as they are duty bound? It's not a matter of discretion whether or not they should act. They should evidently act. It is good to hear that the public protector already has acted on that which is within her purview. But from the South African Police Service, from the South African Revenue Services, from the South African Reserve Bank, from the Financial Intelligence Center, and all other related, it is staggering that they have been absolutely silent when they are too enjoined in duty to ensure that the law is upheld, and more so the Constitution of the Republic is upheld. But I think the input that we will get tonight should be able to give us direction as to, well, what are we to do as an active citizenry to ensure that we protect the rule of law, the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, and at the same time to ensure that we do not lose any of our hard-won freedoms and rights as now enshrined in our Constitution. I will leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Tepu. I'm now going to give an opportunity to Comrade Mervyn Dirks. I've already introduced him, and I've also explained the context in which we've requested him to give an input. Comrade Mervyn, as I've said, had written an open letter to President Ramaphosa demanding from him to behave in a responsible and transparent manner and to be accountable. May I also request Paul Ngubeni and Comrade Tony Ngeni, if he has joined us, for both of them to request to be speakers. That will mean that you will come to the top of the list of people that I can see on the small screen of my phone, and that way I will be able to identify you amongst the very large number of people who are participating in this Twitter space conversation. But for now, let me hand over to Comrade Mervyn. The floor is yours, Comrade Mervyn.
Good evening, Carl, and good evening, Stepo, and good evening to the more than 1,400 participants that are on the platform forum currently. Am I clear, Stepo? Stepo?
You are clear, Comrade Mervyn, you are clear. We can hear you loud and...
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be very, very brief this evening because I believe that tonight will be given, everyone on the platform will be given an opportunity to have a say and to say something. So I think it's very important that we allow as many people as possible to comment on this very, very serious matter. So I will be very brief. I will not be more than 5 minutes, maybe even 2 or 3, 4 minutes. Comrade Carl and Comrade Sepo and the members on the platform. Well, to start off with the listeners and Comrade Carl and Comrade Sepo, I believe that most of the people on here have already read my open letter to the President. Therefore, I will not go into the details of my letter. Suffice to say, comrades, that keeping more than 60 million in foreign currency under your mattress has serious legal and serious criminal, legal and financial implications for Ramaphosa. Now, you know, this is a very difficult thing when you are a loyal and disciplined member of the African National Congress and you have to raise matters in the manner, the way that I've been raising matters for the last year in the public. It becomes very, very difficult, and because there are those that will accuse you of being ill-disciplined. You are getting called controversial. So it's a very difficult thing actually to do this here. There is no glory about it. There is no heroism about it. In fact, you're just opening yourself to the possibility of actually being expelled from the ANC and be removed from Parliament. So that's what you actually basically open yourself up to. So it's not an easy thing to actually go publicly and raise these issues. Therefore, I think very briefly, I just need to explain to comrades why I actually decided to write this open letter to the president as a member of parliament, when I realized that the responses from the presidency kept on changing since Wednesday afternoon. It was the same story, same place, same time, but different responses from the same person. So I decided that something got to give here, and I have to write this letter to the president because of the responses that we received from the presidency. It is also important, comrades, I think, that I need to point out that the South African society have evolved with information technology over the last few years. This information revolution changed the way society and voters interact with political discourse in our country. They have become very more intellectually critical of us leaders and members of parliament in their political discourse analysis. They actually critically analyze our responses and actions to allegations such as the one that's leveled against Ramaphosa. This, however, I think it's a good thing, because without realizing it, society is now actually playing an oversight role over members of parliament and all leaders.
We can't hear you. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Where did I break up, Carl? Carl, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Please proceed.
Yeah, where did I start breaking up, Carl?
It was literally a second. You can just proceed where you are.
Yeah. I am saying that because of information technology, how the society at large has basically changed in the way they're actually looking at leaders and members of parliament. And I say this is a good thing. Because without realizing it, society has now started playing an oversight role over leaders and presidents and members of parliament. So I think actually it's a good thing. So I wrote this letter to the president with that in mind, to say that out there, society is looking at us as leaders, as members of parliament that have a duty to play oversight, that have a duty to represent them in parliament. They're looking at us to hear what is our responses to this here. So I wrote this letter because I've also sworn an oath of office, like we said previously. I have sworn an oath of office to uphold the Constitution. Whether we like the Constitution, that's what we've got currently, until such time that we change it or amend it or suspend it. But we have sworn an allegiance to uphold the Constitution of this country, and we are held by that. So, because of my oath of office, I had to write this letter to the president. Furthermore, I'm fully aware that society now is playing an oversight role over all of us, including myself as members of parliament. So if you're about self-preservation and stomach politics and singing praises, even when the facts of wrongdoing stares you in the face, then being a member of parliament is no place for you. It is no place for any politically weak, spineless men and women. So that is actually what informed me to say, look, you have to act on this matter, because the presidency responded on Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday evening, the responses changed. Thursday morning, there was a different one. Thursday midday, different. I kept on changing until the weekend. Responses kept on changing. It is therefore important, in conclusion, I just want to say, comrades, it's therefore important that all of us hold Ramaphosa accountable to a higher standard. He has to be held accountable to a higher standard, because he is the champion for the fight against corruption, malfeasance, and wrongdoing. So much more is expected from President Ramaphosa. So I believe that as society, we should not be silent when we see these blatant wrongs happening in our country. We have to speak up, and we have to hold our leaders accountable. So I want to encourage all members of society, people on this platform, that we not just only on Twitter and on chat groups, that we try and hold the public. That's very important. It's very important, but we should not only do it there, but we should. Academics, leaders of in society, we should do more than just sit on Twitter and on chat groups and try and hold this president accountable, because we will have no accountability from this president if we don't act. And I believe that we should act. And I actually encouraging the calls for shutdowns and a march onto Lituya House on the 13th. I actually encouraged that, because that put pressure on that we must have accountability from the president, because he professed to be the face of anti-corruption in this country, and he is the one that used commissions and of inquiries and state organs to send everybody that feels that done wrong, send them to go on. So he has to account to. So it's our duty to ensure that this president is being held accountable. I'll end there. I'll stop there, Carl. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mervyn. And I think we should express our gratitude to you for the courage that you've shown. You're one of a kind. There are very few members of Parliament of the African National Congress who have shown this kind of courage, not just with regards to what you did with this open letter, and you quite tried to say that one doesn't get any thanks for it, and you even face the possibility of disciplinary action being taken against you, but also for what you've done with regards to the issues that you raised with Scopa. I see that Paul Ngubeni has joined us. Paul, I don't know if you were with us right from the beginning, but I have introduced you as a legal expert. Paul has also written, and he shared with me in advance, a very interesting article that will be published coming Friday in the Pretoria News, where he deals with some of the legal issues related to all the shenanigans that took place at the Phala Phala farm, and in fact make the point that he believes that President Ramaphosa should be impeached. I'm now going to hand over to Paul to give an input, and then after that, I don't see Comrade Tony online here, we will then open this forum for all the various people who have requested to speak. And I can tell you there's a large number, and we will try to give as many of you as possible the opportunity to speak. Paul, over to you.
Good evening. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, thank you very much for the introduction, Comrade Carl. I humbly introduce myself not as an expert, but as a concerned South African who has watched the shenanigans of this particular president with increasing level of discomfort and unease, because on the one hand, he has a well-oiled machinery of propagandists who are willing to defend every single action of his, even if that comes at the expense of journalistic ethics. Those who are journalists, the posse of journalists who are out there to protect him know who they are. Even members of the ANC, ministers, members of parliament, who are willing to simply go along with what the president does and support everything he does, regardless of how unlawful and unconstitutional it is. I mean, but the few points I want to make here. Let's look at what the president has done in response to the allegations made by Mr. Fraser that the president, there was criminal activity that took place on the president's farm, and the subsequent steps that the president took to deal with that were unlawful and constituted a crime. The president does something very curious and self-incriminating at the same time. No one has accused him. If you read Mr. Fraser's affidavit, which I have, I've read it, attentively. Nowhere in there does Mr. Fraser claim that there was a robbery on the president's farm. But the president, in responding to Mr. Fraser's allegations, simply says, I confirm that there was a robbery on my farm. Now, robbery is not common theft. It's not ordinary theft. If there's a robbery, that means someone with a strong arm used violent means to actually assault a victim so they can part with their possession, or threatened the victim, an identifiable victim, to force them to give up whatever resistance they were going to put up, so that the robber can easily get away with the loot. Now, if the president says there was a robbery, that means we should expect that there were identifiable victims of that robbery. People who were either subjected to threats or who were actually assaulted. Now, if that's the case, you need to ask yourself another question. Does a president, simply by virtue of being an employer on that farm, or by being the head of state in control of the police, does he have a right to handle the matter involving even those victims of the robbery in the manner that he did, deprive them of their right to effective police investigation and protection and due process of law, to force to catch the robbers? If you go with Mr. Fraser's affidavit, they caught the robbers. The robbers, according to the president, let's just grant him that for the moment. They caught the robbers, tortured them, reached a deal with them where they paid them off for their silence and let them go. The president says, I didn't want to report this because I didn't want to cause panic, or whatever the case might be. Well, what about the victims, potential victims who were there? The president's pecuniary interests were elevated above everybody else's constitutional rights. You had a recent case from the Constitutional Court, the AK versus Minister of Police case. It was just reported in April. In that case, the Constitutional Court affirmed that victims of crime have a right to effective police investigation and accountability by the police. Now, if you are going to say, because I'm an employer, because I'm a president, I'm simply going to settle the case with the criminals, as long as they can give me back my money, whether they beat somebody or they threaten somebody or committed a process that affects other people other than myself, I don't care. I'm simply going to do what I do. I think people who claim to care about human rights, those are the issues that they need to ask the president about, make him account on those things. But anyway, there are other issues, and let me just point out a few things that we can explore those things as we go along in terms of the law. The president says, in addressing the people, the ANC delegates at the Limpopo provincial conference over the weekend, he says, I'm a farmer, I buy and sell animals, that's what I do. Well, there's section 96 of the Constitution. That would suggest that the president cannot simply claim himself to be a businessman or a farmer. Section 96(2) of the Constitution says the president, his cabinet, and deputy ministers may not, emphasize, may not, undertake any other paid work. It's a constitutional provision. This is not containing some regulation or a code of ethics or some statute. It's the Constitution itself that says you may not undertake any other paid work. And I would submit that being involved in the business, hands-on involvement in the business where you collect money from people, put it under a mattress, and then people steal that money, you send the head of your protection unit, presidential protection unit, to go after those people, kidnap them, torture them, and then the money is returned to you. This is not some, distant kind of thing where someone simply has shares in a company and the management of that company is done by somebody else. He's not involved in the day-to-day running of the business. The president says, he told the delegates, I buy and sell animals. I'm a farmer, he said. Now, I thought that the Constitution says he may not undertake any other paid work. Being a farmer is a business. That means he was undertaking some other paid work. And don't get confused here, because there is a section of the Constitution that speaks, same section of the Constitution, subsection B, says act in any way that is inconsistent with their oath of office, or expose themselves to any situation involving the risk of a conflict between their official responsibilities and private interests. There are two separate provisions. One that it says, absolutely, you may not undertake any other paid work. That's why the president is the highest paid civil servant, if we really look at it that way. And it's for that reason. But now, here, no one is addressing that issue. But interestingly, remember when there were allegations that Mr. Zuma, the former President Zuma, had received some money from, I don't know if it's Vivian Radio or one of these guys in KZN, but I think some of you might remember that. The amount of noise that was made about that, where they were saying this is unconstitutional. The Constitution says he may not undertake any other paid work. So if he received money while acting as president, received money from a third party for whatever work he might have done, that means he acted unconstitutional. Those voices now, those professors and those liberal voices that were out there condemning Zuma at the time are quiet as church mice, because it involves their favorite angel who rescued this country, according to Chief Justice Zondo. He rescued this country from state capture. Then the other issue that you need to deal with, and that you have to, there's the question of, should we care that the president used or abused the services of Mr. Rudy, who's the head of the Presidential Protection Unit? Well, of course we should. The president's farm, according to him and his defenders, the farm is a purely private and personal business. Now, you do not use members of the Presidential Protection Unit to go and do tasks for you that have nothing to do with government, that are purely private and personal. You couldn't, for instance, ask the head of the, or any member of the Presidential Protection Unit to go and babysit for your girlfriend, or to go and take your girlfriend to a hair salon in Limpopo while you're in Cape Town. Using the public's resources. You can't do that. And what the Nkandla judgment was supposed to have taught us was that the president, and I'm quoting directly from that judgment now, it said, quote, the president has the duty to ensure that state resources are used only for the advancement of state interests. Now, if you are asking the head of the Presidential Protection Unit to go and hunt down criminals who have stolen dollars that you unlawfully stashed in your own farm, but with the understanding that he is not pursuing those people to bring them to justice. The tacit understanding is that you go get those people, however way you are able to get them, you torture them, you get my money, once I get my money back, you let them go. Was that not an abuse of state resources? State resources doesn't only mean money. Using public employees, state employees, Presidential Protection Unit, for instance, if you send them to go and fetch your girlfriend somewhere in Venda or in wherever that is, which has nothing to do with state interest, you will be acting in violation of your duty. You will be on the wrong side of Section 96 of the Constitution. Now, even sending this person who was of the Presidential Protection Unit, what business did he have on the president's personal farm, private interests, unconnected with protection of the president? But we are supposed to just accept that because this is Ramaphosa, who's loved by the white liberals and white capitalists who have groomed him, and we are supposed to, every one of us who speak, who question these things, become the devil incarnate. They don't want to hear about that. Now, the other thing that I'm very concerned about, that I think raises also serious constitutional issues that we all need to pay careful attention to, is this. Vigilantism. Whether the president intended it from the very onset, or whether this simply evolved from the actions that Mr. Rudy took, the president should have foreseen. And that's again what the Constitutional Court was saying about Zuma in the Nkandla matter. The president should have foreseen that when he asked the head of the Presidential Protection Unit, who is not a police investigator, who is not from the jurisdiction where the crime was committed, and who then goes on to rope in farmers and members of the crime intelligence, and there's no indication that they were doing that as part of police investigation work to bring the criminals to justice. This was stealth vigilantism, in which the president hijacked police officials, abused their services for the purpose of investigating a crime which occurred on his private farm, unconnected with state interest. And then, while they were engaged in the process of ostensible investigation of a crime, once they caught the criminals, they used vigilante methods. They tortured them until they confessed and brought back the loot. And once he got his money, it's alleged now that he actually bribed each one of those people for their silence. Say, here's money. You say that, man, the irony of it here is that you're a criminal. You steal and you get a tip from the owner after you have been caught. He actually gives you a tip, a fat tip, 150,000, to say, please, man, let's keep this thing quiet. It's between us. Now, that, to me, if you guys think you still have a country and you still have a president who deserves even a day longer in that office, I don't know what planet you're coming from, but from what I know, what I have read, and what the president's response has been so far, I am not impressed with his. And there is this pernicious myth that's propagated by. I've been having debates with some lawyers and advocates, and who are Ramaphosa sycophants. These guys would love to say to defend him on everything that he does. They go to the absurd extent of saying that Ramaphosa had no duty to report the crime to the police as it occurred on his private farm and supposedly harmed no one other than his pecuniary interest. But by his own admission, he says there was a robbery, which presumably means there were victims who had independent constitutional rights that could not be compromised in the manner that this man did. If you are my employer, and then I'm assaulted by robbers, or they put a gun to my head threatening me even if they don't kill me, do you have a right to then compromise with those robbers as long as they give you your money? And sabotage a police investigation that will have resulted in a due process right and protecting my interest as a victim of crime. Now, he also compromised Mr. Rudy in the following manner. There's a case out of the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Paul, can I ask you that with this point you wind up so that we optimize the opportunity also for other participants to come in and speak. So if you can wind up on this important point that you're making about Mr. Rudy. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll end with that, but I wanted to say that there's a case, State versus Williams, out of the Supreme Court of Appeal, which I think applies perfectly to the situation that Mr. Ramaphosa and Mr. Rudy find themselves in. It says, although mere failure to report the crime to the authorities will not render a member of the public guilty of being an accessory after the fact of that crime, a police officer is in a different position, as it is his legal duty to bring criminals to book. Now, do you think that the president acted in a constitutionally acceptable manner by instructing a member of the police force to engage in essentially acts of vigilantism in pursuit of recovering the president's money, while ignoring that police officer's duty to bring the criminal to book? The criminals were caught, but they have not been brought to book. There are no charges against them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thanks for those very important legal insights. My apology for cutting you short. We'll give you an opportunity to come back again and have a second bite at the cherry a little bit later. Can I now ask who is identified here on my space as Black Pride, who has been waiting for quite a while to speak. Over to you. Black Pride, can you hear me? You can speak. I see you've opened your mic. Can you please speak? Well, it seems that Black Pride is not hearing me, so I want to ask Quincy Zena to join us. Quincy, the floor is yours. Can I be heard? Tepu, can you please indicate if I'm heard?
You are very loud and clear, and I think we shall be moving on, perhaps maybe as a mock-up for the auction that is to happen on the 18th at the very same Phala Phala.
Fine. Let me. Sibusiso Ngema, can you please speak?
Good evening, Carl, Mervin, Tsepo, and the rest of the listeners. Gentlemen, I rise to applaud your leadership and bravery towards dealing with this Phala Phala crime shenanigans. President Cyril was elected on a ticket of free corruption, but up to now, he hasn't been accountable to the people of South Africa on a number of issues, like the 17 bank statements, and now it is this Phala Phala saga. And yet he enjoys a lot of protection from the master propagandist, like the media. There is nothing that is disturbing more than reading the headlines today. We have done a responsibility to protect the people of South Africa as patriots. Please, guys, keep fighting. There'll be a light at the end of a tunnel. No one should be above the law while he enjoys the political assassin of other leaders, like President Zuma, like Comrade Zolim. All the leaders right now have been assassinated. But today, the media is trying everything, is making every effort to protect Comrade Cyril. I just have to say, guys, please keep fighting. At the end of the day, we shall win this battle. I thank you.
Thank you, Sibusiso, and thanks for that encouragement. Natinje, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Carl. Greetings to Comrade Mervin and Comrade Tsepo. There is nothing much, Comrade Carl, but we also like to thank you guys for putting this together, since we have a challenge in our country of our media that is not allowing everyone to put their views as much as they want to. So these platforms are very much important for us who are neglected somewhere in the world, but at least we have a platform now. As NC members, because some of us are NC members in the branches, and we are working very hard to mobilize our people towards what we promised them as the ANC some years ago, that there will be better life. But we have seen the ANC not implementing its own policies, because that is the concern in the ANC. That actually left us stranded as members of the ANC, as members of the society. And we want to urge members of the ANC who are here, members of the NEC who are here to be fearless, stand up and raise their concerns against what is happening in our country. Because without the ANC, it is a fact that without the ANC, this country wouldn't be where it is today. We do get things wrong, we do wrong things, but as the ANC, we have a room to self-correct, and we cannot self-correct with the leadership that is taking place now in the ANC, that is leading us. As ANC members, first and foremost, we need to lead the society in terms of what is wrong, and be clear that President Ramaphosa has failed. And he didn't fail because we hate him or we didn't support him as members of the ANC. We went to the conference, we were divided in terms of our caucuses, not in terms of our factions. In terms of our caucuses, others believe that there is Comrade NDZ, others believe there's Comrade CR. We went to a conference, others won the conference, and we came back and supported him as members of the ANC. We never said just because we didn't vote for him, or the person we voted for him, we didn't say that we're not going to support him. We supported him, and we showed that support publicly. We didn't leave the ANC. We continue to be ANC members until today. But what he did to some of our comrades, it is very painful, and we're not holding any grudges. We believe it's part of politics. But as NC members down in the branches, we believe that Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa must be removed, and the ANC members, including the NEC leading us, it must be very clear on that. It's not a matter of we don't like him, it's a matter of fixing the ANC. And when we say we're talking about Comrade Cyril, we're also talking about the NEC itself, because the NEC itself was voted by us, and those NEC members must also lead us to the right direction so that they can also step aside and allow the process of the ANC and allow those who are capable to lead the ANC to take the ANC forward. We are very clear that what is happening in our country right now is not what we expect from the leader of the ANC. We have seen things happening in the ANC. There were mistakes that happened, but we acknowledge them. We did tell even the president, the previous president, if there is something wrong as the ANC, not that we protect the leaders of the ANC based on how much we like them or how much we hate them. But the reality is, what is happening now is a total disrespect to us also as ANC members and citizens of this country. And when you listen to what the president said last week in Limpopo at that conference, it is a disgrace that he actually sees us as fools, that he can just divert the issue. And they didn't end there. They went all out with his PR groupings to create a narrative that to deal with this, they need to bring back the issue of the Guptas, of which the issue of the Guptas, it is not an issue that we were saying it was wrong or right, but it is an issue that we must be clear about it, that if there's anything wrong that they did, we must take them to court, let the court go through its own processes, and then there should be a verdict that points at them that they were wrong here, they were wrong there, because I don't think the Guptas were working for the state in such a way that they approved things on their own. Then they stole money on their own. If they stole any money, there are people here in South Africa that are there who can testify and tell us what exactly happened. But we watched there on the Zodo Commission, that was a slaughterhouse for the ANC, where even the president of the ANC himself failed to defend our deployment policy, of which our deployment policy, it's where we managed to drive the policies of the ANC when we were in government. So there is that element of trying to destroy the ANC in order to create whatever coalition that we do not agree with, because coalition is not a solution. And we as ANC members were very clear that the ANC is still a driver of transformation. We've seen the ANC driving transformation during the time of Comrade President Zuma. It wasn't because we like him, but because he listened to us. He took exactly everything that we were saying. The policies of the ANC were there. He was implementing them. There were challenges. There was a lot of fightings inside the ANC, but he didn't concentrate on that. He concentrated on building the ANC, uniting the ANC, building the country. So we all know that there are those who are now saying the ANC is a bad political party and and they are not clear that the ANC have got its leadership, and the leadership of the ANC, if it's failing to implement ANC policies, the ANC policies cannot implement themselves. So the issue here is the president of the ANC failing to implement the policies of the ANC. He doesn't relate to those policies, so I do not find any reason for us to keep him as the ANC. We must go back to our branches, mobilize ourselves, go to from branch congresses, regional congresses, provincial congresses to the national congresses, and be clear on that before anyone can judge us somehow, because we've been judged for too long over things that we have resolved on, that this is what must be done on this sector. Right now, a lot of things are very wrong in our country, and it's not because of the Guptas, it's not because of Zuma, it's not because of Brian Molefe, it's not because of Koko Matel, as they've portrayed all our leaders as criminals. But it's because the ANC is failing to implement its own policies, and those policies must be implemented by those who are deployed by the ANC and government, of which President Cyril Ramaphosa himself have that duty of appointing ministers. And he appointed ministers who themselves does not believe in ANC policies. Look at Comrade Pravin Gordhan. He doesn't believe in the ANC policies. I don't know why he's still a minister. There's a lot of them, comrades who are talking things that we do not understand. Look at Comrade Fikile Mbalula, Comrade Begitele. Who are those people? Those people are wasting our time. We must be very clear as NC members. We must go back to our branches, mobilize. These Twitter spaces must be used, yes, but they must be used in order to spread the ways that what is wrong in the ANC, so that we cannot all be judged over things that we know nothing about. We must go back to our branches, build our branches. The ANC is in this problem today. It's because of the branches that were there in Nazareth, and we must counter that through the right channel, whereby we have strong branches, solid branches who are going to be clear that out of everything, we are poor, we have nothing, but we are going to vote for the right leadership. Thank you very much, Comrade Carl.
Thank you, Comrade Nati, and I think many of us take it very well, the manner in which you spoke as a member of the African National Congress. Something that has to become very clear to all of us is when one expresses concerns about the conduct of President Cyril Ramaphosa and some of the National Executive Committee members of the ANC and the manner in which they fail the history and the policies of the African National Congress, one is not anti-African National Congress at all. The message I heard from you was that we need to save the ANC. And part of that process of saving the ANC is that someone who conducts himself in the manner that President Ramaphosa has conducted himself has to leave, because in the process of his conduct is in fact destroying the African National Congress and the ANC as the leader of society. It also ends up being the destruction of the hopes and the future of our people in South Africa. I want to ask Mr. Bonza to come in and to give us his contribution. Mr. Bonza.
Evening, comrades. On my point is, I just want to say, I want to know what Comrade Cyril is gonna be doing about this whole thing, because he's on the spotlight now. As a comrade that likes to defend each and every situation that is around the president, I just want to see what he's going to do. It's his turn now. And the last speaker has said it all. We must defend our ANC, but we must not defend shenanigans, because it was the mistake we made before. So we must start rectifying ourselves. We cannot allow ANC to go down like this. ANC has been a movement for so many years, and we can't be allowing it to be disrespected like this. And also to make sure that we allow everything to run smoothly, go back to the branches, encourage people to come back to the ANC. But we can't be allowing these whole situations like this to be taunting the whole ANC that we love so much. And this is not the last thing that is going to come out. And Arthur Fraser needs to be defended. He's a whistleblower, and people are starting to attack him left, right, and center. Why he has been quiet, why he's like this. There's RET forces and all that stuff. But no, that guy needs to be defended. That kid needs to be defended by all means at cost. Mr. President, I must just do the right thing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzo. I think the issue that we've seen in the media, where the motives of Arthur Fraser is questioned, or the timing, any of those things are irrelevant. A crime has been committed. A crime has been reported. A crime has to be investigated. It is as basic, as simple as that, finish and clear. I want to now give an opportunity to Harold Furwood to join us. Harold?
Good evening, Carl. Thank you for this opportunity, and to your other co-hosts. Yes, they spoke very silent about the constitutional and legal matters, and including the conduct and of office bearers. So I appreciate that. There's certain aspects that I just also want to bring to attention to, the fact that early on in this president's taking office, he attended a gender-based violence summit, and he stood there and he listened to the harrowing stories of women that were victims to this, and he referred through the administration and over these years now to this point, he spoke of gender-based violence being a human rights issue and calling it the second pandemic. And it's harrowing that since this happened, since Arthur Fraser's criminal complaint and placing there that torture and kidnapping has taken place, that I think everyone here can vouch that there's not a day that goes by where you're scrolling through social media and you see a plea for a missing person, women and children being kidnapped. There was also recently with those boys that were kidnapped. The whole country almost rallied about it. And here our president and his co-conspirators and henchmen that he's used public police, law enforcement people to turn his farm into a flood plus. I mean, you said, sir, said a day must go by that he sits in that office not a minute further. I mean, we are bringing such shame and what will descend on us as a nation. We are a divine thing. When we speak of, use the words of supreme in the Constitution, the Republic, and we are the Republic. It's not just some institution. We are the Republic means is how the people shall assemble. And we are assembling without our ethics and morality to allow this to continue for days, where we're dragging in the poor Namibians into this, our neighbors and our brothers on the other side, and to think that this was all transpiring when while we were in a hard lockdown for a pandemic, where the president placed us in a state of disaster, where there was travel bans, you couldn't move out of your house. In fact, we had Collins Koza murdered in his backyard, murdered, because he was just sitting there and he didn't want to go into his house because he was problem. And yet they were flaunting all these things, hunting down people, disregarding while we were cooped up and going out of our minds and losing our livelihoods, not being with our families, and he just ordering as if he's a sadistic gangster. I'm not sure if I'm having faith in the people that I call my brothers and sisters and brethren, Africans, that we will not tolerate this. And unfortunately, I know your love for the ANC. However, the fact is that the first thing that the state executive state president approaches is a private entity that the ANC is, to go to the integrity committee and not approach the state institution like he is an institution, like Parliament and the law enforcement, and then calling MPs to his residence and stuff. That's the self-correct about the ANC. You must look at that's possibly a haven where you find protection from the rule of law and things that is a separate, as if this is a separate entity within the Republic, that you can find shelter from public scrutiny and any action that you do as a citizen. So therefore, I urge you to make sure that you don't allow the ANC to be used as a shield to think as the president is doing, because he hasn't spoken in person. Arthur Fraser has put his reputation and his name onto an oath, onto an affidavit. The president is speaking through his presidency, through his spokesperson. He's speaking on a platform on ANC rallies. However, he's not taken the country to his conference, which I can't believe, because his conference seems to be to do shady and the most heinous things in private. However, he's not called a family meeting like he was doing through the state of disaster and acting like a father and pretending and speak to us. He's not taken, it's been days now, almost a week, and he hasn't addressed us from these things that have profound consequences and implications. Because we have people that we have a crime and violence problem in our country, and if the first citizen conducts himself today, then everyone can justify their actions. When men can karate kick their wives in front in their place of work, and in recording, as you might have picked up now that you got 20,000 rand fine, that person feels he's no longer, he felt he does anything wrong. He'll say, oh, the president tortures his domestic worker. And I mean, nobody has verified whether she was sexually assaulted or even raped. And we speak about our country taking gender-based violence seriously. So therefore, I hope that I didn't break up in this during this my rant here, but it's important that I stated my feelings and my concerns. So I thank you.
Thanks, Harold, for that valuable input, Harold, and the others before. I think perhaps maybe as we now in the last hour of this Twitter space, one of the things that I think we need to really narrow down on notwithstanding that, there could be a number of people here who think, look, let's look towards the ANC as the solution to, or the panacea to the problems that are facing our nation. But let's look at really the legality of it and the implications when the rule of law is subverted in the manner that it is. I think from having read the affidavit of Mr. Arthur Fraser and having listened to the inputs of many others, even this evening here, there are at least 10 crimes that have been committed and the evidence has been provided. So it is very essential that perhaps we should be demanding now of the law enforcement agencies as to why they are not swiftly moving to charge the persons that are alleged to have committed this crime, so that therefore a competent open court of law can therefore be able to test these allegations and make a judicial finding based on the evidence that would have been provided. One thing that must not be overlooked is the fact that Mr. Arthur Fraser actually provided all the evidence, which in turn means that there cannot be any justifiable cause on the delays based on that there might be still to be an investigation. The evidence is all there. The question now becomes, well, why has no one been charged? And I think that is a demand not only on the law enforcement agents, also with the ANC in parliament. The members of parliament, we must always be borne in mind, they too have taken oath of office. The question that must be asked, say for Member of Parliament Mervyn Dirks, who has gone forth, why are all other members of parliament, particularly from the African National Congress, completely constrained from opening their mouths on this matter and actually even calling for swift action based on the evidence that is overwhelming that has been provided? And I think that's really where the next speaker, as we speak, let's look at that, because when the Constitution of the Republic has been subverted, when a crime has been committed, as it is evident that a crime has been committed, and in fact, numerous crimes have been committed, it can never be permissible that you can have the first citizen of the Republic sitting at the Union building with such grave allegations against him. Thank you.
Thank you, Tepo, and thanks for giving us that direction. I must say, when I was listening to Harold and he referred to Phala, it sent shiverings down my spine, because we are having the conduct of someone who's supposed to be part of the liberation movement in South Africa behaving like a thug from Phala. Very serious allegations. And Harold, yes, you were heard loud and clear right throughout your very valuable input. Let's follow the direction that Tsepo had given us to try and concentrate on the crimes that have been committed, and at the same time also how the South African law enforcement agencies has to proceed to act swiftly in order to apprehend those who have committed these crimes. I'm now giving an opportunity to Umzukulu to come in.
Good evening, Carl, and good evening, Comrade Mervyn and Comrade Tsepo and other listeners. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thanks. My take on this matter is that I was asking myself questions concerning the very issue, but mine was just that this head of security who was assigned to this matter, it is alleged that he even went as far as Namibia. Was he on leave? Was he using state resources to travel there on a case that was not reported to SAPS? This case was not reported to the SAPS. Who is paying for the travel expenses to Namibia to investigate the case? Is he using a state vehicle? What was happening there? Like, those are the issues that I was asking myself. And on the issue of this thing, there are allegations that there was $4 million US. That is what the reports are saying. who are the cashiers who work there on the farm, who are employed to handle cash? And can the president provide for auctions, if there's an auction, there are registration fees. There are people who register. When you attend an auction, you pay a registration fee and then you register and then you attend. There should be a list of people who should have attended on that particular day, either between January or February up until the date when the money was found. Was there such a list of people who attended? How many were foreign nationals? Probably, because those are allegedly US dollars. How many were from the US? Are there other foreign nationals coming who came to that auction? And also the fact that which cash in transit company is contracted to the farm to collect such amounts of cash in case there's an auction that generates so much cash. I am saying this because there's an auction coming up on the farmers alluded to by Mr. Tsepo. So there could be could be used as a cover up to say, okay, the auction happened, there was this 4 million US dollars, and then the other one is happening, it will be highly publicized so that someone could come and buy whatever animal they buy with a huge amounts of cash, and then it will be downplayed as something that is very normal in that space. But with this one, which animals were sold? How many animals were sold? To who? Can the public see the receipts or carbon papers as proof to say these are the people who bought? Because if I'm buying for an animal for 10 million or 5 million or whatever, I should get a receipt. The company should have a slip that says this was bought by Carl. He bought this on such a date with such amounts. And those people who handle cash, are they on the farm? Are they, if I buy for $20,000 or whatever, are they able to? Are the animals sold in rands or in dollars? What is happening with this exchange rate? I'm more interested in the cash that was used there and that was found there. I think maybe law enforcement agencies will help us, but maybe they are not part of these Twitter spaces and where people are discussing these issues. But I'm more interested on such things. If the acacias they're handling cash, how long have they been working there? Did they handle any cash of that amount before this auction or after the February the date stated on this thing? Mr. Root is employed by the South African Police Service and works in the VIP unit assigned to the president. His travel expenses to Namibia, he's acting on that case, he's apprehending of these perpetrators, those who had stolen the dollars. Was he acting on behalf of SAPS as an employee of SAPS? In his traveling to Namibia, was he on leave? Did he travel that on a mandate of SAPS as an employee? What was happening there? Because people just take law into their own hands. They hide things. They use political power to hide things that should be known to the public. It is very unfortunate that to be suspected of such things at that level. This is the highest office of the country. So everything happening there, the incumbent ascended to the office on a transparency card. He portrayed himself as the most transparent president with no wrongdoing. There's cash that has not been accounted for. Are financial institutions able to account for that cash? Was it banked? Which financial institution has an account with the farm? And between January and up to the 9th February, can we find an institution that says we received so much cash from this particular farm? Those are some of the things that we're asking ourselves as the public, but maybe law enforcement agencies will help us. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe if I can just give clarity there. By the way, for all listening, American dollar or a British pound or a euro or a yuan or an Australian dollar, a Japanese yen, all of them, they are not legal tender in South Africa. You cannot buy anything using any of those currencies. The only legal tender in South Africa is the South African rand. It is for that reason that there are authorized dealers where you can go in the event that somebody wants to bring in a foreign currency into the country. That foreign currency has to be exchanged at an authorized dealer, authorized by none other than the South African Reserve Bank. So that is the one thing. Secondly, when it comes to the issues of the constitutional conscript, it's not a matter of style or preference or a matter of discretion. The president is duty bound to have to uphold and protect the Constitution of the Republic. And it is now evident that in this instance, there are several instances whereby the Constitution of the Republic has been violated. But even so, the very fundamental rights in Chapter 2 of our Constitution, which have been violated. So therefore, the question must be, to the law enforcement agencies, what exactly has constrained them from taking action, which they should have done so expeditiously in order to ensure that the integrity of the rule of law is protected? Because right now, anyone outside of the borders of this country should be worried. Even those within the borders of this country should be worried that, well, if there's no rule of law, who is safe? If the number one citizen can be alleged to have been involved in such heinous crimes, well, who is safe then? Who is safe from anything? And I think lastly, I want us to focus on how is it possible that the police officer, Ruode, who's the head of the Presidential Protection Unit, has still not been suspended a week after Mr. Arthur Fraser laid such a serious crime, but more so with evidence, not just lodging a charge or not just filing a charge, but actually having provided the evidence in the manner that he did. How is it that this man is still in the job, has not been suspended? Those are the issues that are very fundamental, and let's not lose sight of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tepu. And of course, we must remember that when all of this happened in 2020, we were in deep lockdown. So the question arises, how did this money even get onto the Phala Phala farm? Because surely it wasn't because there was a provide possibilities for purchasing the animals that President Ramaphosa was referring to. It wouldn't have been possible. Rather strange. I want to give an opportunity to Wayin Nzeni to come in onto the platform. Wayin Nzeni.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you very much. Great opportunity. Comrades, I hope I'm clear. Comrades, I think we should question the CODESA negotiations before we come to the current problem, because what is happening currently, it is as a result of those negotiations, those compromises that were made in 1993, going forward to the elections. Because if you look at the institutions and the people that are protecting Mr. SCR, are the very institutions and the people that were made to benefit during the CODESA negotiations. And the various people, the people that can be able to explain and to take us from this dilemma are those that were part of the negotiations, or those that were close to the negotiations. Because, like every day when I wake up with this thing of CR, it's not like that I hate him, but I hate how he is portrayed to us and how he is presented to us and flashed to us. Like if you look at JZ, a single mistake that were made by his people that were working around him, his comrades, his own comrades, are directed to him. He must be hanged for the mistakes that were made. For example, if we look at the arms deal, he was never even a president, not even the deputy president when these negotiations started to take place. But he was singled out as being the main cause or the main corrupt official in the arms deal. Now, today we are having a president that is keeping so much money in his farm after declaring that he was no longer in business. A president that is involved in kidnapping, which is one of the Schedule 6 offense or Schedule 5 offense. A president that is laundering money, because if you are going to conduct such business without being regulated, it means that there is money laundering. So how many times should this person or this president be accused or be suspected of committing offenses that we can start to see that he's doing something wrong? It means that now the very people that are protecting him are the very people that are having interest in whatever that he does. So what are we doing on the floor, on the ground floor? Because now what I know is going to happen, it is going to be made impossible for us to mobilize, because the only way to resolve this thing, to remove him, is to mobilize and make ourselves visible in union buildings, in wherever we find his voice. Let's not have any hopes to the NEC. Let's not have any hopes to those people, because they know what they are protecting. They are not only protecting Ramaphosa, they are protecting their back, because they know 80% of them, if not 90, are spies, and they were spies. So the enemy uses that against them. Whenever they want to open their mouth, those dirty linens get to be hanged in front of their face and say, look, this is what you did in so and so. You know how we killed so and so. You know all those things. I think, Comrade Carl, you will understand what I'm saying. So our problems are those of us who are still protecting the white monopoly capitals. They are doing that at our expense. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you, comrade. I want to give an opportunity to a comrade that appears as Spectator Index, Vusi. Vusi? Okay, Vusi is not responding. I'm giving the opportunity to Paradox.
Thank you so much, Comrade Carl and Brother Tsepo, Comrade Marvin. I hope you guys can hear me well. Where I am,
we can hear you clear.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. A lot has been said. I think there is little left to be said on this matter. It is coming out clear, comrades, that we are getting to a point where we may be forced to choose to decide whether this South Africa is the South Africa the people of this country died for. I am saying that because there is a trend that is starting to prevail, and this trend is starting to gain momentum just immediately after this administration came into power. That now, everything that is happening, every crime that might be leveled against any dignity in this country, it must be measured against Ubabu Jacob Zuma, to say, but this is not compared to what Jacob Zuma done. Babu Jacob Zuma is not the law of this country. We have a constitution, we have laws. These shenanigans that are leveled against the president are shenanigans that must be tested against the laws of this country. And it is only then that we can say, you know, oh, this was not wrong, this was not right. This thing of applying the law with the left hand when it comes to a particular group, and then using another hand when it comes to others, is going to destroy this country. Before you know it, no one will be respecting the laws of this country. Anarchy will prevail everywhere, and that will be because of the attitude that we are seeing with the current president. We were hopeful that his dedication to respect the laws of this country will be manifested in actions. But what we are seeing currently is defiance and self-justification. We cannot afford, Comrade Carl, to allow this country to be torn apart because of this type of patronage that we are seeing. Now, I'm hearing people around saying, you see, if Cyril Ramaphosa steps aside or steps down, who will come in? I want to say that doesn't even start. In other words, these people are implying that there is no one that they have captured. If they lose this one, who else they can capture? And that has serious implications to how people perceive how the law applies in this country. We have children to raise in a society that must give hope. But currently what is happening, it means that it's wrong when it is Zweli Mkhize. It is right when it is Ramaphosa. It is right when it is so and so. It must come to an end because we have laws in this country. I heard one professor today saying, this is just a regulation that might have been broken. What inspired that regulation is not an act of parliament. What inspired the act of parliament is it not the constitution of this country. So this becomes a very serious time of our history where we'll have to decide whether a country that gives hope is being built or a country that favors a particular group is actually emerging in our face. Comrade Carl, one thing I want to honor you. I want to give you my respect. And I'm giving you my respect because of you not being a hypocrite. When there are issues, injustices that were directed at Comrade Jacob Zuma, you did not go around spreading some false propagandas and trying. You stood and said, we are standing with Comrade JZ because we believe he's innocent before proven guilty by the court of law. But you were ridiculed and rubbished for that. But today, the very same forces that used to ridicule you are the ones who are actually now adopting that slogan. And now they want to see that happens because it's now somebody else. It brings us to a point, comrades, where we need to decide. It will bring us to a point where we may need to decide whether this South Africa that we are seeing unfolding in our eyes is the same as South Africa that our forefathers fought for. In the issue of the burglary or the robbery, the president said it's a robbery apparently. Even if those people went in there, took a teaspoon, and come out and run, and then they were manhandled from Namibia and all. Now that is a serious matter. Let $1. That is a serious matter. That's a president's private property. People can break in and take things, and then they leave, and then they are manhandled outside the parameters of the law, brought back to the country. Those things that people are hearing. The president must save some of his dignity and integrity and just step aside, go clear his name, and then the law will vindicate him if he's innocent, or, he might be found liable for some of the things. But it will be the law that will have prevailed either way. What is wrong with that? I don't know whether maybe I should continue, because a lot of comrades have said a lot of things that were more.
Comrade, I think
effective.
you've made the point. It's a good point. I think let's try to keep a little bit shorter so that we give more opportunities. Tsepo, I see you wanted to come in. Is there something you wanted to add to what Paradox had shared with us?
No, let's proceed. And I'm not saying let's proceed in the William Marisha style, where he said that 50% of the members of parliament are stupid. They say, Honorable Marisha, withdraw that. He said, well, 50% of the people in this parliament are not stupid. And they said, yes, let's proceed.
Thank you, Tepu. I think it is important for us to hear the call from our people that action is necessary. And I think that is the direction in which Tepu was also trying to push us. That it's absolutely critical for us to insist that the law enforcement agencies have to act. And it cannot be that we have selective justice in our country. The blindfold of Lady Justice cannot be removed, and certain people are targeted, and we know who those are, and others are left off the hook. It's amazing how there's been an effort by people, even amongst them, some very eminent legal minds in the last week, trying to find ways to get President Ramaphosa off the hook, while they were more than ready to act and introduce kangaroo courts against many of us in a way that the principle that one is innocent until proven guilty was totally trashed. I want to give an opportunity to Gift Nkane to come in and share with us his views. Gift. Unfortunately, Gift is not responding. I'm giving now an opportunity to Dr. Eugenia Kula. Eugenia, can you hear us? I'm going to open for Eugenia because I see that her speaker acknowledgement had been wiped out.
Let's say she's connecting.
Yes,
she might have lost connection.
No, I was at a speaker a minute ago. Yes, I'm here. I've been listening. At some point I got a call. I'm just wondering if where this discussion is taking us. What do we seek to achieve? Because I'm just trying to map in my head. The president is deployed by the ANC in parliament. So is the first stop not supposed to be the NEC or extended NEC that has deployed the president to parliament as a comrade before he becomes an appointed president by parliament? Maybe we should ask that question. Then we should start there to say, okay, is there a mechanism in the ANC to hold corporate president accountable? We start there because I'm just thinking, why would I embarrass myself in parliament and be shouted at by whoever, let's assume she'll ask my name is instead of managing this thing as a party? Is it not supposed to start there? How many people are part of the NEC? And they're supposed to say, let's rather look at this. How do we manage this? If it's corporate, there's an issue. I don't want to, even for an allegation, not this serious, it's not even allegation, not this dossier with evidence. As an allegation for objectivity, that's what we call like precautionary suspension. I'm just trying to apply my corporate governance. Precautionary suspension. You can call it a step aside, or no, not a step aside. Let me leave that. I might not understand the step aside. You call it like recuse yourself to allow objectivity, which is a fact that you have authority and everybody else reports to you. They will not move. I've learned, it looks like the other Fraser has other details, you see, which is wisdom, that maybe you keep some cards close to your chest. And he has people who are implicated. So my question is, I wonder how many of the supposed to be decision makers are implicated in those bank statements, if any, you know? So really, the ANC is a problem. And you cloud all this. I hate that all this happened when we were locked down. People have lost jobs. People have lost jobs. If you drive transformation in this country like me, you might be rendered jobless because there's this, you know, the renewed arrogance of white people not want to transform and increase racism. And that thing is not really condemned. It's like you should thank certain young people for even addressing issues of racism. Why is that when we talk transformation as a policy of this government? So really, the first point we can talk here is the ANC. And my question is, I wonder, I heard there's a on Friday, there's a lockdown. Is it still continuing? If ANC fails us, because I would expect the NEC will do something between now and tomorrow. So assume, that's what we should be discussing. If it's scenario one, because our concern is that there's unemployment, there's high, you know, there's inflation is high and all that. Just nothing is working. And people are kept with whatever amount. Like I said, those who are getting the 350, it's not much. Can we allow our children to be subjected to that begging of 350, even graduates? I went to post office to register my car. The kind of young people I saw queuing for 350, they've got degrees. So something is wrong, you know, and you're not ready to transform. You can't force companies to transform. There's, you know, and I'm disappointed. I don't want to lie. I really thought, okay, the president with the money and the qualification and how he portrays himself, really is going to save us. But we've moved from bad to worse. So all the other thing is serious. You can get more than 10 things. Whether it's defeating the end of justice or gender-based, you can get more than. It's not there. Now that the list is there, what do we do? Where do we start? That's what you, Carl, and others in the ANC should, like, I'll say, hi, the NEC should answer. And then we say, what next? So we need to start there, because how do you expect the police to investigate a sitting president? So you should just like recuse yourself. I called it, if you have a conflict of interest, recuse yourself to say, really the Mr. Clean man, to say, you know what, to allow a fair process, maybe take a sabbatical for 3 months or whatever. What anybody can say now that, okay, I was scared, now I can say what I know, or now we can make this. So that's the problem. So we could still going back to the ANC before we go to the masses and other things. So this is very serious. It's really serious in my view. So what next? To say all these other things, we all know is serious, very serious crimes. So what? Maybe I'm a strategist. So what? Having said all that we're saying, so what? In that answer, so what? Scenario 1 this. If it fails, there's another scenario 1A and 1B. If scenario 1 is there scenario 2. That's what I thought we could be. Or maybe next time we come with that approach. But ANC and going to the branches and whatever, maybe that would be a longer route and whatever, whether it's going to take us there. So does ANC want their president to be embarrassed in parliament? And I'm also not sure I trust DA, because is it not the matriculant who are saying no, like they vote with the president? I'm kind of not sure whether this ANC is really the ANC I know or the ANC stroke DA. or the ANCTA? I don't know. So do we rely on the parliament processes? I don't know. I'm just saying this is really serious. I want to take it back to those who are supposed to do something. The first, the deployees. So if they fail, and now let's assume Arthur Fraser, which is my last point, and it has got some few cards on his chest. If now he puts those cards on the chest, because we're saying law enforcement must take its place, which judge, or even a magistrate, or whatever, MPA or whatever, commercial crimes leader, who have the guts or the steel backbone to tackle such a, the number one in the country. So you rather, if that fight is there, there's a movement, anything must decide, and then unfortunately, if most of them are in some bank statement, that's very unfortunate, then we know we are finished as a country. So now when the other file card comes out, then we know this judge and this judge and this judge are implicated, then we follow this process too. You follow a process that now you can also reduce yourself. Maybe others will retire if they don't die of heart attack, So really, I'm kind of thinking, so what? That's my question in my head. We're talking, so what? Those who are the NEC, what's the process? Because there should be an integrity process, whatever process of the ANC. The one that brought any other MP, minister, and everybody to Parliament. Before you go to Parliament, I'm not sure if I trust Parliament because the DA, apart from Tony Leon and few others, they've been quiet. And some are downplaying this because there's a main NEC of some 6 white males who, because they are funding everybody. So those who are funding, no, just make noise and not make it too loud. Increase the volume to 20, not 30. So that's I kind of sense that. So we might be here, sitting here with no solution, and then we'll be hearing English. So please, that's my feeling. So what? Do we have scenarios? Do we start with the ANC? So that's where I'll pause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eugenia. And I think
I'll be happy that you answer the scenarios. So what? I'm just happy to, because everybody talks and we can try and list the whatever. I don't want to list anything, but I know it's serious crimes. I can decode that. So what's the purpose of this? What do you want to see? Do we have is there a plan? Can the ANC planning something? I'm very interested in that.
I think the challenge that we are faced with is that this is a watershed moment for our country. And that watershed moment has to include action by the African National Congress and also generally by everyone in our country and also our law enforcement agencies. You see, I'm beginning to get the impression that when the president so quickly says that he will go to the Integrity Commission of the African National Congress, that it has got nothing to do about the issue of integrity, but that he is trying to use that commission as it has been used in the past by himself and by certain selected members as a place of refuge to protect themselves. And the African National Congress has to avoid that, because if we allow that to happen, it is going to be an absolute disgrace. I want to now go to someone who I identify here on his Twitter handle as I instigate reparation and restoration.
Hello, everyone on the space. Hello, Mr. Cullen. Hello, Mr. Tsepo, and the naughty one, Mr. Mervin. Mr. Cullen, I have to say this first. You really confuse me. I don't know. Man, you're so loyal to Ubaba, but somehow it's okay. Maybe I'll learn along the way. Guys, we are in this position right now, but it's not a surprise. This thing, it started when the guy who joined ANC, in less than 5 years, he joined ANC. He was able to suspend Herigwal. In no time, there was a meeting that was held when Ubaba Zuma, Ubaba Mbeki, and Ubaba Mandela, they were out of the country. And in that meeting that was negotiating, actually those were negotiating in a Codesa. They were removed, of which is Ubaba Mbeki and Ubaba Zuma. And there is a book that I've read that said, Ubaba Zuma, he gave every file he had to Ubaba Mandela. And Ubaba Mandela, for the front or the united front of the ANC to the negotiation with an NP, he chose to silence those files. And for the unity of the ANC and maybe for the benefit of the South Africans, Black South Africans who are the underdog, it was also silenced. It didn't end there. Again, went on and on and on with what happened. So this what is happening right now, it's not a surprise, including the fabrication of the arms deal case by the ANC MPs and give it to Omamo Patricia de Lille when he was even called a useful idiot. It's a trend. It's not an event, it's a trend. It's a series. I don't know, guys. I believe there are people within ANC that you know, so and so did 1, 2, 3. I don't know if they're really in ROT or maybe Amakabalega Tambo, to put it clear. Are you guys aware that you've got people amongst you in the ANC that are out for blood to everyone who is disturbing their wealth, of which they were given by apartheid? If that's the case, you are aware. I don't know. My take is maybe, just maybe, if we got to the point where Amakabalega Tambo are losing in the next election, what is the step forward? Because right now, as soon as, I don't want to call them a UDF, but UDF in this is got so much upper hand, of which they're protecting the interest of the apartheid empire, of which is including even those who were in exile. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, after the death of Owar Tambo, of which was mysterious because it's not natural death, but it was portrayed.
I'm sorry to interject, my brother. I think, I'm just worried about time. Remember, there are many other issues that are plaguing or affecting our country that we can ventilate. But I think for the purposes of tonight, we are ventilating the issue of criminality that has occurred at Phala Phala and, saying, where does our country go next? I think there are many other issues, but I think for the sake of everybody, let's limit it to the crimes or the subject matter, which is the crimes that are alleged to have been committed at Phala Phala. Thank you.
I don't know if you can let me ask this question to say, do the RET got a plan if things go west in the next ANC election?
Well, there is no organization called RET. Like, there was never any structure or organization called the 101 veterans or whatever. So I think for that is settled. There is no such thing called the RET structure. There might be people who believe that the policies of the ANC, which spoke of radical economic transformation, and as early as 2012 at Midrand at the policy conference, and they spoke about the second transition or the second phase of the transition, but there is no such structure. So maybe let's not say, can RET forces, because they are not an organized or recognized, so they don't even have a seat at the table even if they did exist informally as a gathering of persons, but they don't have any seat at the table to talk about anything. But I think, yeah, tonight let's look at, well, this one, what is to happen next, and what are we to make of our constitution when crimes have been committed, and more so by people who have sworn to an oath of office?
Well, I think our brother raised a number of important issues in the context of how we ended up where we are now. But Comrade Tepu is quite correct to say that if we want to address all of those issues tonight, we'll be here for the rest of the night. But certainly, many of the issues that he raised, and I think the historical context that he tried to sketch for us why we ended up where we are, is indeed relevant. I couldn't help but to think when he was speaking about that question that President Tambo asked, Ubani Law, who are you? And certainly the question wasn't just physically, who are you? But why are you here? With what mission did you come here? But those issues will be ventilated in further discussions and further conversations that we will have on these Twitter platforms. But for now, Tepu is quite correct to say that let's concentrate on the issue of the criminality that has happened at Phala Phala farm and how we should respond to that. I now want to hand over to Pumlani, who has requested to speak. Pumlani? Pumlani is not responding. I see that Sandile Zungu is with us. Sandile, I'm giving you an opportunity.
Good evening, Comrade Carl, and our co-host Tsepo and Mr. Mervin. No, mine, I'm going to be very short. I think at this point it's vital to take an action. You know, because when it comes to the other faction, but I'm going to be clear with that one. When it comes to other faction, we know Helen Suzman, the media would have been all over social media, would have been all over the place, making noise about this issue, you know? So when are we going to have those organizations when these guys or the guys who want to control us are doing such crimes? When are we going to stand up for them? When are we going to stand against them? Because it seems like we're going to talk and then do nothing. And then the question will be, who want to lead this organization? Because they will attack you. Definitely, they will attack you. I think last week on the space last week we had I don't know, on Sunday, Mama Tabile Damin did mention, would say, we are the cowards. We are the generation. For sure, I'm pretty sure wherever Chrysalis is very disappointed about this generation. You see, it is vital.
All right, Sandile, just hold a moment.
Yeah.
Lambahani, can you please mute your mic? I can hear that you are getting excited.
I'm very angry.
Yeah, please just mute your mic. We'll give you an opportunity to speak. Thank you. Sandile, please proceed.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, as I was saying, it is time we take action. It is time we create this organization who's gonna stand against this corruption, because it is corruption. It is corruption, and we are not doing anything because they know we are scared of going to jail. We are scared of losing anything that we believe in, because now they'll attack you. They've got their person in high, position in NPA, judicial, Concord and stuff. So we really need to do something, because if you're gonna keep on having Twitter Spaces, I mean, not that I'm against this, but I feel like this is the opportunity, because everyone can see there's something fish going on in Phala Phala, and this is the right time to create an organization to stand against corruption, to stand against the thieves of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandile. And I think we all agree with you that we need more institutions that will also in the non-governmental organizational sector come forth, stand up, and fight these issues. It is not just the African National Congress that has to get its act together. It's us as a whole society that must stop just talking and start acting. I want to give an opportunity to Lambahani, who has been clearly very engaged with the points that Comrade Sandila made. Lambahani, the floor is yours.
I'm not going to be long. Carl, we are tired of being abused by the ANC. Enough is enough. This Phala Phala issue is opening up for us as South Africans. We cannot relegate the duty of fighting the Phala Phala issue through the ANC. Those people have abused society is too much. We need to stand up. Enough of this ANC shenanigans. Ramaphosa must step down, and the masses are the ones who are going to do it. I'm very angry. I cannot talk anymore. Sorry.
Thank you. And I think we feel your pain and also your anger. And all of us who have looked at the events as they unfolded, not only recently, but in the last couple of years, surely feel this sense of anger and the need for us to mobilize. Kim Heller, I'm handing over to you.
Hi, good evening to all, and thank you. This has been a very powerful session. I'm going to be very short, and I think the emotion of the last speaker is something we should all feel, and that should spur us into action. You know, I'm convinced that Ramaphosa is going to be seen as the victim of this whole thing, despite him being a criminal in this regard. And it's because the media are protecting their man. I've said for many years that this president is the president of white people, not black people. And yet I'm quite surprised at how many people are standing up for him, despite him not standing up for them. So I think we need to confront the fact that the mainstream media is guarding him very strongly. So we'll have a portrayal of him as the victim in this, as weird as that sounds, because we've seen what the media has done to true activists, such as the public protector. So I think we must anticipate that and come up with a media alternative. And I think, Carl, I must commend you for putting this forum together. It's the closest we have to, a progressive, honest voice, and perhaps this needs to happen more. But what I would like to say is the silence of ANC people at the highest level is so shocking. There are very few people I respect in this organization anymore. I mean, Mervyn, it's such a pleasure to hear you, and I admire your courage. But, apart from you, there are very few people, and Carl and one or two other people. And it's absolutely appalling. And I've heard a few people speaking about saving the ANC. The ANC is not interested in saving you anymore, doesn't seem to be. They seem to be preserving white privilege. And I just, I did, yes, people would know me. I went from the ANC to the EFF, and now I'm very happily a recovering charterist, because I don't believe the solution lies in that. But, at least the EFF is doing something. The silence of the ANC is just shocking, that ordinary branch members aren't in the streets protesting against this. And I would really urge you to do that. I mean, the visuals of Jacob Zuma being attacked, went worldwide. But now there's this absolute silence around a president who has done far worse and has done so for years. And I think it's time now to get out into the streets and show that South Africa is absolutely a no-go zone for a president who has abandoned his own people. And you know, until we do that, I think nothing is going to change. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. I'm faced with a conundrum that there are many people who have requested to speak, but we have said that it's a Wednesday evening, it's a weekday. We will have this Twitter Spaces as 2 hours and then proceed. We've had already 2 hours to Mervyn Dirks to come to the issues that has been raised by the many speakers that have spoken here. And then we will also give an opportunity to Paul Ngubeni and to Tepu Khadima as my co-moderator to wind up this discussion. But unfortunately, we are not going to have the chance for all of you to speak. There will be other platforms that will be created coming Sunday and again next Wednesday, where many of these issues that we touched on today will be added and looked at further. But specifically, I want to ask Mervyn and also the other two speakers that I've asked to come in now to deal with the issue of what is necessary now, both in terms of the law enforcement, but also in terms of the mobilization of our people to bring this humiliation and this outrage that has been brought to our doorstep by the actions of President Ramaphosa and those sellout National Executive Committee members around him. How do we deal with this in a way that will take us forward and bring an end to this humiliation and destruction that our nation is faced with? I'm handing over to Mervyn.
Thank you very much, Carl. And thank you to all the participants this evening. It was very informative. I've learned quite a lot from the inputs that all members that is present has put in tonight. I think what we need to do, I think, you know, that we need to now become very active. And I believe that, you know, all members of parliament, their email addresses and their phone numbers are published on the parliament website. I think we must flood these members with emails and SMSs speaking to their conscience on this matter and where the ANC is going to, and whether the ANC is really prepared to save itself or save the interests of white capital in this country, as Kim has pointed out. But I think on the issue of Phala Phala, we must now start being active and start sending emails and SMSs to these members of parliament. I remember when there was a vote of no confidence in President Zuma, we were flooded with emails by South Africans. They flooded us with emails and SMSs, but they were a bit rude in a way too when they were addressing us. But I don't mean we must be rude to these members. We must just speak to their conscience on the matters and point out to them the mistake of them being quiet during a time like this here. So I think that's what we need to do. The other thing I think we need to do, we need to speak to people in the branches. We need to speak to people on the ground. We need to invade community chat groups. We need to push this thing here, because we must never let it die. No matter what the MPA decide, we must not let this one die. We must keep it alive, and we must drive the public narrative on this matter. Thank you, Comrade Carl, and thank you, Comrade Seppo.
Thank you, Comrade Mervyn. I think I agree with you that our members of parliament have to be held accountable, and we must demand from them to actually execute and act on the oath of allegiance that they took when they became members of parliament. The time has come for them to speak out, to have the courage, to have the kind of courage that you have, Mervyn. And if they fail to do so, they must go in the same way that President Cyril Ramaphosa should have gone long ago. I'm now handing over to Paul Ngubeni. Paul, can we keep it short? Because we are truly running out of time. So a short input from you and then from Tepu. Paul? I don't get a response from Paul. Perhaps he's no longer online, although he still appears on my screen. Tepu, as our co-moderator, can you come in and also help us in terms of what you've requested throughout this whole Twitter space conversation, and that is, what are the legal steps that need to be taken? How do we proceed from here in a manner that will be successful? Tepu.
Look, I think the information, or rather the evidence which is overwhelming that has been put forth, requires the members of parliament, all of 400 of them, to have to act because they have taken an oath of office. So tomorrow they cannot pretend that it is business as usual during the planned presidency budget vote. So tomorrow, the South Africans will all be watching to see that, are these members of parliament serious to the oath of office that they have taken, and in the event that they are found to be in dereliction by their failure to have to demand specific action to be taken, then the question is that, well, what should the citizenry do, lest we get in the situation whereby there is self-help? As to the law enforcement agencies, specifically the police, there are, at least as I mentioned, 10 crimes that have been committed. The evidence is before them. So it cannot be correct, because any delay on their part will harm this republic beyond repair, because people will then move into a self-help, and self-help is anarchy, which is an antithesis to the constitutional democratic order that we have as a country. So not just the Minister of Police, but actually the police, the highest office in the police, as well as within the National Prosecuting Authority, they cannot afford to keep silent. The South African Reserve Bank, all of them, before this week is out, they need to pronounce themselves on what action they have taken and what measures they have implemented. But beyond that, also the banks in this country who are required in terms of the Financial Action Task Force, which is headquartered in Paris, they themselves need to now say, well, what measures they are taking, because it is now common cause that a case of money laundering has been made. And therefore, the Financial Action Task Force has got material interest in any money laundering activities or allegations of money laundering activities. And their members, which are the commercial banks in this country, they need to pronounce themselves, because failure to do so, together with the Financial Intelligence Center, failure to do so will again drive us to a situation where we will have no standing globally, but also people will resort to self-help. Because if the president cannot be equal before the law, there can be no legitimate expectation for any one of us to have to therefore be held in terms of the measure and the standard which is in our statutes. And that is very, very critical. Now, I am aware that the Democracy in Action have written to both the South African Police Service as well as the National Prosecuting Authority, and it appears that they have not been entertained, or their demands have not even been responded to. So I guess maybe citizens have to rally behind the Democracy in Action to ensure that this matter is not spin doctored. Because here we are not dealing with matters of politics, we are dealing with matters of the rule of law, which has been broken, and therefore action has to be taken. There is no room for discretion or a question of turning a blind eye. Crimes have been committed, very serious crimes, and there has to be action. But before this week is out, the police need to have done something as so demanded by the Democracy in Action, who we must support. But thank you very much for everybody who participated. And I think it has been valuable, and it will be good to still hear the legal perspective from Mr. Paul Dwayne, who I think is still on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Tepu. Yeah, I see Paul is on now. He's unmuted himself. Paul, you are going to be the last speaker before I wind up this Twitter Space conversation. Over to you.
Thanks, Comrade Carl. Thanks to Harold, who spoke earlier, Dr. Eugenia Kula, and other people. I'm mentioning people not because I want to be long-winded, but what they said just touched me. Let us not worry. This is not really solely an ANC issue. Even people who are not ANC members need to ask themselves, what kind of president do we have in that office? We had the so-called Glenister case, where a citizen went to court for his own reasons, but what he was able to establish was that we need to have the Hawks as the independent agency that deals with matters of corruption. The reason why there was an amendment to the South African Police Service Act was to make sure that people who have an issue about corruption or theft were mandated to go and report that to the Hawks and not to some presidential protection unit. Ramaphosa knows that. By instructing a member of his protection unit to deal with a corruption issue or a theft issue. In this case, I don't have the time to explain why this falls within the ambit of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, which is PRECA. But I just want to say that I enjoyed the contribution that other people have made. We have a country that we must protect. The president that you have now is not the right person to have in that position. He must go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I think the tone of your last words are very well taken. President Cyril Ramaphosa must go, and he must go now. We are talking tonight in the context of the presidential budget vote that will take place tomorrow afternoon. I'm really not interested in what President Ramaphosa wants to tell us about so-called economic plans, so-called Tumamina actions, new dawns, whatever he wants to share with us with his usual PR strategy. All of us should be interested in one thing, and that is, when is Cyril Ramaphosa resigning?
Exactly.
And if he fails to resign, and he should actually announce his resignation tomorrow, he has failed this nation dismally. But if he fails to do so, not only should we insist that our representatives in parliament should take the necessary action, not only should we insist, as Tsepo Khadima has led us a number of times during this conversation, that all the necessary legal steps have to be taken by the law enforcement agencies. But we as a people, as a nation, has a responsibility to then stand up, to lock down this country, to go into the streets and demand that this man must go and that this regime under him has to come to an end. There is no other way. That is what we have to do. So beyond our discussions and the emotions that we've expressed tonight in this forum, all of us should have a responsibility to work, to organize, to mobilize ourselves, to mobilize with civil society, to mobilize in our communities, to mobilize within our political parties and organizations, that Cyril Ramaphosa and this regime has to go. Yes, many of us are members of the African National Congress. Many of us are concerned about the future of the ANC. But as it has been pointed out tonight numerous times, this is not only an issue for the African National Congress. This is a challenge for our whole nation. And we as a nation have to take up this challenge, save ourselves. I said earlier tonight, this is a watershed moment for our nation. If we allow our president's criminal activities to go unconfronted, if he is not being kept accountable, our nation is on the brink of destruction. We are on the brink of becoming a failed nation, short and sweet, of becoming a banana republic. None of us can allow that to happen. All of us who fought for the liberation of our people, who know the sacrifices that so many South Africans have made, the many people who've laid down their lives for our liberation, the suffering that our nation has gone through, cannot allow this situation to continue for one moment. I want to conclude by referring to what we are doing with this particular platform and also the other social media platforms that are closely linked to this platform. As you know, we are having twice a week these Twitter Spaces conversations, once on a Wednesday and one on a Sunday. And coming Sunday, we will have another Twitter Space conversation, this time about our racist banks, also about the closure of bank accounts of individual South Africans and companies that do not seem to toe the line of the Tumaminians. We are going to get Reg Nkosi, who is an economist who's written a very interesting article on the Independent online on the role of our banks and the problematic manner in which they conduct themselves. We have also extended an invitation to Dr. Iqbal Survey to join us for Sunday. Dr. Survey has not yet responded, but I hope that he will be able to join us, and we will have that conversation then on Sunday, this coming Sunday, from 5 o'clock on. Tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock, we have an hour-long interview that I've conducted with Professor Chris Malekani. It's an inaugural interview of a series that I've started, which is called Mpangazita in Conversation. Professor Malekani is probably one of the most progressive economists and academics in South Africa. He has written extensively about radical economic transformation, and he has analyzed the current terrible quagmire that we find ourselves in our country and the increasing inequalities of our society extensively. It is going to be a very, very interesting discussion. It will be broadcast live from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock tomorrow night on the YouTube channel that we will make available the link so that all of you who have an interest to join in and get some true food for thought, rather than the nonsense that we are likely to be dished up tomorrow afternoon during the presidential budget vote, to bring us to a point where we can think constructively about how to take our country forward and the kind of steps that are required if we want to save this nation and secure the hopes for liberation that our people have fought for so hard. I want to thank all the participants. I thank Tepo Khadima as my co-moderator, Mervyn Dirks, who joined us, a very courageous member of parliament on the basis also of his open letter that he had written to President Cyril Ramaphosa, Paul Ngubeni for his invaluable legal expertise. All of you, thank you. But the people who need to be thanked most are all of you who have joined into this Twitter Space conversation, who speak from your hearts. I've been deeply touched by the emotions, the sense of we cannot allow this to continue. Sometimes by the sense almost of desperation that this has to come to an end. All of us must use this energy not in a negative way, but in a positive way, to mobilize, to change our society, and to get rid of the thugs who are now bringing our future to the point where there's destruction and where we've been brought to the brink. It has to be brought to an end, and it is in our hands to do so. I thank all of you for your presence tonight in this Twitter space, and I'm looking forward to meet all of you, and I hope many more, this coming Sunday at 5 o'clock, where we talk about our banking system and how to change that system so that it can be of service to our people. And please, may I ask you again to listen also and watch tomorrow night on our YouTube channel, in my crosshairs, the interview that I'm having with Professor Chris Malekani. I wish you a good night, but I wish you also an evening where you are not going to sleep well. You should sleep restlessly until our country can be saved. Thank you so much, and good night.